If you know me and my channel, then you know that there's nothing I enjoy talking about more than Metroid Prime 4. And what's really fantastic is that so far in 2023, despite the game still being a mystery and silent behind the scenes, and all of us knowing pretty much nothing about the game, it feels like there's been more of a reason to be focused on this game and discuss and theorize it more than ever, simply because Metroid Prime Remastered released only just 1 month ago. And between Metroid Dread releasing in 2021, Metroid Prime Remastered releasing last month in February, and now we've got Metroid Fusion releasing on Nintendo Switch Online, we are living in the great Metroid Renaissance. I've discussed this in videos recently, and boy is it so exciting. And as a Metroid super fan, with it being my favorite franchise, and all of you followers who know me very well know that Metroid Prime itself is my favorite game of all time, I am just thrilled to see what's happening here. And so again, it allows us to more confidently turn our sights to Metroid Prime 4 and what we hope and desire for that game. And we also get to wonder about when it will be revealed, when it will release, and the focus of today's conversation, what platforms will it truly release on? So here's the thing, man. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. We're obviously talking about Metroid Prime 4 being a potential cross-generation release. Now, in many of my tons and tons and tons of videos about Metroid Prime 4 over the years, and especially going back probably the last 2 or so years, a common idea that I've mentioned sporadically in a lot of my different conversations and appearances on podcasts and whatnot has been that Metroid Prime 4 will probably make the most sense to release as a cross-generational game. However, to my knowledge, and man, I've made a lot of Metroid videos, so it's almost sometimes hard for even me to remember every topic I've discussed, I don't really think I've ever made a video conversation specific to this one idea, and so that's what I'm excited to do today, and really break down why I think Metroid Prime 4 makes the most sense as a cross-generational release on both the current Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2 or next-gen thing that we all expect might be revealed and released in the next 6 to 18 months. Of course, there is a chance that it won't release as a cross-generational game, and maybe it's a Switch-only title, which would be a very curious decision, and while I think Metroid Prime Remastered has shown us that they can make it really fantastic and really beautiful, I think it would also be disappointing to a lot of folks. They might also take an even bigger swing for the fence and make it exclusive to the next generation console. If I'm being honest, I actually think that that's the least likely of the 3 options, but to be fair, right now, everything is a mystery. We don't even really know if a Switch 2 is going to get revealed or released sometime soon, even though I and many people expect it to. So it is an option on the table, but man, I just don't think that they're going to go next-gen only with this game. So why does Metroid Prime 4 really make the most sense as a cross-generational game? Well, to me, it's pretty obvious, and it's simply because the install base for the Nintendo Switch is too strong and too large. We all love Metroid. We all know that it's a fantastic, high-quality franchise. We all know that most of the games have been received very well by the fans and by critics. There are a couple of black sheeps, even though I enjoy them all. There are some games, I think we know which ones I'm talking about, that maybe haven't landed to the larger gaming community, and that's fine, even though I enjoy those games as well. But at the end of the day, I think the hard truth that most of us have learned to accept is that despite its high quality and its very passionate fan base, myself included, it's never been the biggest seller, right? Its best-selling game for the past 20 years was Metroid Prime, released in 2002 on the GameCube, selling 2.84 million units, which isn't nothing, but it's also not a massive selling tier, and it's not a massive selling number, right? We're not looking at Zelda and Smash Brothers and Animal Crossing types of numbers here. And then, of course, in 2021, when Metroid Dread released, that game came out of the gates swinging, sold 3 million copies in only 6 months, just over 6 months, and became the best-selling game in only that period of time. It was remarkably impressive. But at the end of the day, my personal prediction for Metroid Dread's final sales totals is probably around the 3.5 to 4 million units mark, assuming it stays just a Switch title. If they re-release it on the next-gen thing, that could change things. But looking at just the current version of Metroid Dread we have, I'm guessing 3.5 to 4 million lifetime sales, which is good, but again, to the point, it's not massive. And so I think Nintendo is realizing with the success of Dread, the success of Metroid Prime Remastered, the rabid interest in what's happening with Prime 4, they know that they're at a very interesting turning point for the franchise, and they can, if they treat the reveal and the release and the quality of Metroid Prime 4 properly, this might be a great kind of time for them to really push it into the forefront more than ever and really start to push it into one of their highest selling franchises, right? Or at least into the next tier of higher selling franchises. Most Metroid games have sold between 1 and 3 million copies, right? Which again isn't nothing, but it's also not massive. I think Metroid Prime 4 could represent a chance for Metroid as a series to kind of get pushed into that 5 to 10 million range with the average release going forward if we see this success continue. I think Nintendo wants it. I know myself as a Metroid superfan wants it, and I think a lot of you guys who are also Metroid fans, we all want this franchise to reach that level of success because most of us know that it really deserves that. And so to me, looking at Metroid Prime 4 releasing as a cross-generational game becomes the perfect 1-2 punch to just make it exactly what we want it to be. A 5+ million seller title, which could also help the entire franchise moving forward feel like a stronger brand, right? And that 1-2 punch to me consists of using the 120 some odd million Switch units that are out in people's households and hands once this game would probably end up releasing, and the incredible hype around a next-gen console that might be playing a version of Metroid Prime 4, especially if that next-gen version is taking more advantage of the power being afforded to it by the Nintendo Switch 2, right? If it looks and runs and just performs significantly better than the Switch version, that is going to be so exciting. And I promise you, after the incredible hype and success of Metroid Prime Remastered and the way so much of the gaming community rallied around the excitement of that game, including newcomers to Metroid, this is the time for a Switch 2 launch or launch window version of Metroid Prime 4. If it's taking advantage of the power, we don't want it to look the same as the Switch version, like Nintendo kind of did with Breath of the Wild between the Switch and the Wii U. Kind of the same version and same graphics, which is fine. But I think that for Metroid Prime 4, if they could make a cross-gen version actually take advantage and look significantly better than the Switch version, people will rally around it. They will be excited for a Switch 2 or a next-gen console. Metroid in a first-person setting now feels more exciting to people and a lot of new Metroid fans in the wake of Metroid Prime Remastered. So you take that to the next level, the next generation level, with the Switch 2 launch, people will. Metroid fans and new-coming fans alike, people will rally around it. And if they can get their hands on a Switch 2 at launch, and if they can get their hands on a copy of Metroid Prime 4 next-gen version at launch, they will bypass the Switch version, and they absolutely will pick that up because Nintendo could position, for the first time ever, they could be positioning Metroid Prime 4 as that killer app launch title. Now, trust me, I'm well aware of the counterpoint that a lot of you are probably typing in the comments below as I'm talking about this. That counterpoint that you're probably typing is, Metroid's never been the biggest seller. You've even admitted it in this video. They would never position it as a killer app title. And you know, in a lot of ways, you guys are right. I mean, I'm sitting here acknowledging that the franchise has never been as big of a seller as it truly deserves, right? But the whole point of this conversation, or one of the many points of this conversation, is that I think we're seeing the tides start to turn and Metroid becoming more relevant and interesting to a wider group of people and of gamer and of Nintendo fan. And so at some point, if you want to take a franchise and grow it, you need to take those chances, you need to change its fates, and you need to put it front and center. And so again, the essence of what I'm trying to get at here is that the launch of the Switch 2, if everything happens the way we guess it might, right? If the game releases cross-gen, if the Switch 2 is kind of around the corner, if Metroid Prime 4 would be ready to launch alongside the Switch 2, you know, all of those things have to happen. This is only theoretical. But if they happen the way it kind of seems like they might, this is why I think Nintendo will take that chance and say, okay, let's give Metroid the franchise, and Prime 4 specifically, its shot. Let's make it as beautiful and incredible on the Switch 2 as possible, while also releasing a last-gen version for people who can't get the Switch 2 or can't get Prime 4 on launch day. Let's make a beautiful version for the people who can get it on the Switch 2 on launch day and put it out there and show people this is what the Switch 2 is capable of. Look at the incredible graphics of Metroid Prime 4, and this is how incredible the Metroid franchise is, right? The Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 4, if they release in tandem, could benefit each other. Prime 4 showcases the graphics of the Switch 2. Switch 2 boosts hype of a brand new Metroid game. It's a perfect symbiotic relationship that, again, in theory, could just benefit Metroid as a whole. But again, the last point here to really drive home is that the cross-generation aspect also has the benefit of the Switch install base, right? That's why, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago, it becomes that 1-2 punch, right? Because all of this next-gen hype and excitement and graphics and stuff I talked about is true, but again, we know how console launches go nowadays, man. It's going to be a bloodbath trying to get the Switch 2. And I'm actually really nervous for whenever it does happen, and I've even seen a lot of you guys sharing that same sentiment in comments in some of my more recent videos about Switch 2 stuff, that people are starting to realize it's just going to be an all-out war zone trying to find one of these things for probably 2 years. That's what happened with the PlayStation 5. I don't think it's going to be different with the Switch 2. It might even be more extreme. And so Nintendo needs to account for that with any game that they launch the Switch 2 with. So it kind of becomes a little bit of a different conversation where maybe every game that launches the Switch 2 needs to be cross-generation, which again becomes disappointing because then the 2017 Switch hardware kind of is inadvertently holding back anything that would release as cross-gen. So, you know, that's a different conversation, and I don't want to go off on a tangent about that. But when we come back to the idea of Switch 2s might be hard to find, and if Prime 4 is a cross-gen game, they need to be aware of the fact that it could hurt Metroid Prime 4 if it's only next-gen and people can't get those consoles because it removes the ability for people to buy and play that game. And if the Switch has 120, 130 million units in people's hands by the time all of this stuff goes down, well, they'd be kind of stupid not to take advantage of that and at least give an option to the 100+ million people who won't be finding Switch 2s on launch day. So give them a competent version of Metroid Prime 4 to also buy and play. As I've mentioned, in the aftermath of Metroid Prime Remastered, we've all seen just how incredible Retro's development is. We've seen how amazingly well these games have aged in terms of their gameplay and in terms of their art style and their graphics, and the way they modernized a 20-year-old game basically looks like a modern game. And most of us agree. Anyone with like normal human eyes, I think, you don't have to like the game or like the graphics, but I think it's pretty clear that the best actual visuals that makes it from the screen to your eyeballs that we've seen on the Nintendo Switch is Metroid Prime Remastered. And again, it's a remaster and a kind of remaking of the visuals of a 20-year-old game. It is so phenomenal. And so I even made a video kind of breaking this down, that what we saw Retro and Iron Galaxy Studios achieve with the graphics on Metroid Prime Remastered means that whatever they do with Prime 4, even if it's on a Switch version of Prime 4, it is going to be beautiful. It's going to be probably at least twice as good looking as Metroid Prime Remastered. Really think about that. So I think that the Switch version, if that's the only one you are going to be able to find the day it releases in a theoretical cross-gen fashion, I think we're still going to get an incredible, beautiful, fun experience on the Switch. But we're all going to want that next-gen version, man. If it all happens this way, again, we're just theorizing. If it happens cross-gen, and if we can get our next-gen version switched to the day it releases, that's going to be the one we all want. And so it's all just to say that I think Nintendo realizes this is a great opportunity for Metroid as a franchise and for Metroid Prime 4 to make it the most successful it's ever been. I think the game is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be very fun. I think it's going to be beautiful. And I do think, only guessing, that it's going to be cross-gen and release probably the same day as the Nintendo Switch 2 whenever that happens. So that's just personally why I think it's going to go down that way.